One of the types of loops that I use more frequently in other programming languages is the for each loop, and PHP includes a for each loop. I want to bring you over to the documentation so that you can have a look. There's two types of syntax for the for each loop in PHP because you can iterate over not only your standard array, but you can also iterate over the associative arrays as well. And it's including some syntax here that really makes it kind of sweet, actually, as far as how you can extract the keys and the values for an associative array. It's really neat. So I'll give you the basics here. The for each construct provides an easy way to iterate over arrays. Like you really have to know what your index counts are, or be able to determine what your index counts are when you're initializing a for loop. The for each, it really kind of simplifies it. It works only on arrays and objects, and it's going to issue an error if you try to use it on a variable with a different data type or an uninitialized variable, which is interesting because you don't see too much of that, or at least I haven't encountered too much of that in PHP. So I'll definitely try to see if we can get that error showing to us in this example. So there's two syntaxes as the documentation specifies. There's the for each if you're using just a standard array, and then there's the for each syntax if you're using an associative array. So you've got an array that's got key value pairs. So you've got some examples here in the documentation, which I highly recommend you taking a look at. But instead of going over these examples, we'll just run over to the IDE and we'll see if we can work on a couple of things ourselves. So we'll start with the first one here, which is basically just kind of iterating over an array. It's super easy. It's a lot easier than if you were to initialize a for loop when working with an array. So we'll put something together here. It's pretty straightforward. We'll say, let's work again with numbers, and we'll make it really straightforward. We'll say 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Right? Pretty simple stuff. And then we'll say for each. And then, hold on, let me hop back over to the documentation, just take a look. We want to make sure that we specify the array as value. So let's see. Let me look at an example here. So array as, okay, got it. So let's go back to the IDE. We'll say numbers as, I think we want to do that, right? So this is new for me. So if I screw this up, we'll get to document this in the video, and it'll be fun for everybody. So let me do this. We'll output number, and then I'll use the concatenating operator to include a line break so that this is easy to look at on the screen. Let me save that, and we'll jump over to the browser and just make sure that this is working. And it is. So we've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 all on their own line. Jump back over here and we'll just evaluate what we've done really quick. We quickly initialize this variable with, or this array rather, with these numbers. We say for each. We specify the array, which is numbers, and then we say we want to represent each element as a variable called number. And then within our curly braces where we do all of our expressions, we just simply echo the number and the BR tag. And then that's what we get. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, right? Now let's try it a little bit differently. Let's now try it with an associative array. We'll see how that works. So let me think of something here. We'll say names, right? And we'll make it something like, we'll say that the key is their title, so we'll say captain. And the value is going to be Jim. We'll say doctor. That's the title. The name is Bones. We'll say Chief Science Officer, and the name will be Spock. And then to really kind of mess things up, we'll say Leader, Emperor. Then we'll do a for each loop. And I'll just set my skeleton syntax here, and we'll say we're going to reference the names array as, and then we'll indicate two variables for the key, which represents our title, and then a variable for the value, which represents our name. I've already kind of lost the syntax for this, so let me jump back over to the documentation and have a look at this again. So they're saying in a for each loop with an associative array, you indicate what the array is here, and then as key and value. So similar to the syntax that you would use when you initialize the associative array, you want to use the same syntax here, like so. Obviously, key and value don't necessarily have to be represented this way. You can use whatever variable makes sense to you. In fact, we'll be a good example, and we'll say title and name. So when we echo this, we should see something like the title is title and the name is name. And then to make it easy to read, good old BR tag. And then we'll terminate that line and we'll say, let's do a little bit of praying and hope that this works. When I jump to my browser, I get the title is Captain and the name is Jim. The title is Doctor and the name is Bones, etc., etc. So it kind of worked the way that we were hoping, which is terrific. That's kind of my first experience with the for each loop in PHP. So if a first-timer like me can do it, certainly you can do it as well. So let's go back here and review what we've done. We initialize this array. It's an associative array, so we've got the title and the name, etc. And then in the for each, we're specifying the actual associative array first, and then we're saying that its elements are going to be represented as first the key of title, then the value of name. These two variables then become available to us as we're evaluating our expressions here in the curly braces. So I'm able to output the title over each iteration and output the name over each iteration. And my result is what you saw here. So that's basically the gist of it. Pretty straightforward. There's more to learn in loops. There's also certain expressions that you can consider in loops as well if you needed to break out of them or if you needed to ignore a specific iteration. We'll cover all of that in a subsequent video.